Okay, so we're in the field, and so this is what we're thinking.
Short enough.
Okay. All right. I can't quite reach this, but I'm going to just do it. I'm touching the paper, and I'm going to manipulate this, and I'm going to drag it around. And so if this is an underpainting, what does underpainting mean? Let's listen up here, guys. Let's listen up, because I'm trying to work fast. An underpainting is meant to inspire you, to loosen you up. It is an opportunity for you to connect with your board. It is an opportunity to break down those walls of fear that some of us have. It is meant to be worked over top of. That's why we call it an underpainting. So let's say the sky is moving out there in the field. And we know things are going to be changing. And the sunset is a perfect opportunity. And last night at sunset, this changed 15 times. So this particular paper, I can move the watercolor around in a manner that is quite different from a traditional watercolor. We're going to stretch a little bit here, but it's going to work out just fine.
Why is that, Susan? Is it not
Because
as
it
absorbent?
has a textured sanded surface. So this is not a traditional watercolor surface. So while that's drying, I'm going to do another vertical version of the same subject, pretending I'm looking out the window or I'm in the field. I'm mixing some cobalt violets. I've got a couple of blues. I have ultramarine, and I have a phthalo. So I'm making, on purpose, a variety of different colors. Now this can transfer to watercolor and or oil or cool wax. Color is your friend. So while that's drying, I'm going to go over here. And the more water I use in watercolor, the thinner the pigment's going to be. And we also know that in watercolor, when the pigment is wet, it's much darker. So as it dries, it gets clear. I'm working very quickly here, so I'm not trying to be a perfect painter's for you. My goal is to have you see that the freedom of expression is a big portion of what plein air is all about. That allowing your brush to kind of dance around in a watercolor, or even in a really thin wash in your oils, you can do the same kind of gestures. Now, because I know that this is an underpainting for my pastel, I'm not too fearful about making what I would call a mistake. And the drips, a lot of these pastelists that use watercolors and underpainting, like Richard McKinley, he's all about the drips, and he's one of those pastel gods that can break all the rules and get away with it. Speaking of pastel, at the convention, Albert Hameau, who is my mentor, he's in his 80s, he was given the Lifetime Achievement Award for pastel and oil. And I'm just like so thrilled that they gave it to somebody that's alive and they don't wait till they're dead, and or he gets it while he can still appreciate that sense of accomplishment. And that he is a pastel painter. Because we know that in the echelon of the world of the arts, oil is up there in that, like, being the top dog medium. Watercolor is way at the bottom. And I don't know where pastels and acrylic are, but it's certainly... Okay. So gravity can be your friend. And in this case, I kept twisting and turning and manipulating this whole easel there. I don't have quite as much freedom here, and of course I'm trying to work quickly. I'm going to do it one more time on this one. And let's see if we can get a little bit more of a richer dynamic. Whoa. Okay. We have no clouds today. You can ask questions. Pardon?
You're mixing purple.
I'm going to grab some cobalt blue. No, actually, I have phthalo blue.
Okay.
And I have ultramarine. Now I'm grabbing some cobalt violet. And I'm trying to get these cooler blues, but because I'm working very quickly, I'm not taking the time for the subtleties. But all right, and for some reason this paper, it's separating out. I'm not sure why. Maybe there's a little, who knows? Maybe Susan grabbed a brush that has a little oil residue in it. Since I work in multiple mediums, and that could be why it's separating, but I've just been using it there. So I'm going to try to manipulate it and see if I can get those kind of bubbles out of there. And I'm going to try something a little different in this one.
That's my observation, that the three don't necessarily have any similarity with each other in terms of composition or how you're putting the color in.
Okay,
It's,
so I'm pushing variety.
I do have a question in regards to pastel.
Okay.
If I know for myself when I was doing pastels, I didn't own a set of watercolor. Could the same thing be done with the pastels and then with the water or alcohol wash to create the same?
Yes, it could. It could.
And what kind of alcohol do you use?
I
Gin,
generally
vodka?
use water, but I believe Tim was using something.
Isopropyl,
Okay.
90% dries
90%.
fast.
And what do you use?
It's just the same that
Okay.
you know,
You
drugstore.
put it in a spray bottle,
No.
you know, just brush it up, brush it up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to get this coppery color there. Okay, so my colors are going a little thicker. And I think I talked to some of you about locking in your bottom because it helps step your eye in. That's a trick that I do. This water is going to be tainted, so I'm going to dump it into here and start with fresh because I'm changing up from the... So can you see what I'm doing here? Let's zoom in on this palette, what I'm trying to do, if you can. What I'm doing right now is mixing the mountain. And we know in watercolor, if wet touches wet, it kind of goes together. Excuse me. Oh, I thought somebody was playing the piano for me. All right. So I'm going to throw in a horizon line here. This one I'm purposefully putting down lower. And I'm going to try to get some of these greens going. I'm going to go a little bit beyond the 15 minutes, but I think you guys will be okay with it. I'm trying to keep my spine here straight. So I'm throwing in the mountain. I know, since I'm going to be doing, blush you over there, I'm going to be doing some pastel over top of that. There's some forgiveness for perfection and the shape of the mountain. I'm changing up colors so that it's not all the same color. And I don't have my view out the window, but I really find it quite useful when you do a study out in the field and then you take that study into your studio and you do a painting from it. It kind of really, it does loosen you up and opens your mind. And I know you work a lot in the studio, Linda, and oftentimes your inspiration is from what? Can you
All
say?
intuition.
Intuition, okay. So intuition is really allowed, but a lot of people don't tap into that. I'm going to start adding some interesting fuchsias. And I'm going to trade up a brush here and introduce some of these greens into this. Hi, thank you. She brought me coffee. Very much. Merci beaucoup. All right, so I'm going to throw some of these trees in here. Oh, that's a little bit too green. Oh. Okay. But you know, when you ask yourself, I wonder what would happen if, it gives you an opportunity to try new things. So I'm finding that one of the best sized brushes for details would be like a number 1. That's what this one is here. So I can put in some of these trees if I want for a little more detail. And I'm going to run down here to this horizon line. Now, what's the worst thing that can happen if we do something that doesn't quite go the way we want it to go? We discover something. Because we know that when we take risks, we open up doorways to discovery. If we always play it safe and try to do that perfect painting, then there's no doorway open for something, you know, potential. to try to get some more turquoises in here.
Yeah, and like I said yesterday, the discipline leads to freedom, and that's what you're doing right now. You're so disciplined with your palette, but you're free to paint.
Thank you. Well, this is interesting for me that I'm seeing that I can allow some of this lavender to show through. So notice I'm going right over top of it. And that's definitely loose. So I'm trying different things. I've got 3 different images. Can you see yourself out at the sunset, just being really loose doing an underpainting? Now, in pastel, you could actually take your pastel sticks. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to sketch in my mountain. And I'm going to show you how you can dissolve that. And remember, the purple plays really great games. I'm going to take this and manipulate the pastel by dissolving it, just like the watercolor. So if you don't have watercolor, you can do an underpainting like this. Right? Okay, let's.
I like to do something new every day. Oh, sorry, I jumped in there.
Go
I like to
ahead.
learn something new every day, and I'm not doing that here. But Susan, and sometimes when you're doing that, you learn something that you skipped over, so basic. And I just did about really putting that horizon line in there under the mountain. I've never been that specific, like really nailing it in there so it doesn't wander, I guess.
I think the horizon line, this where the tree line is around here, is a very distinct thing. And if you can get that, that's very helpful. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing here. I want to try to, sometimes I like using the synthetic brush. Now, I've been using the hog bristle brushes, which are durable and can handle the sandpaper, but this is a very smooth sandpaper. So I'm going to go for my synthetic, and I'm going to try to get some of these lovely field colors on my palette here. I think this is dried a little more, so I ought to be able to do that. And it's bleeding into it. C'est la vie. Such is life, as they would say in France. So
That makes it more spontaneous.
it
Because-
does, and when I build my pastels over top of it, I'll be able to keep some, leave some, cover some up. So I'm going to let that one go. It's a happy happening, as Bob Ross would say. Yeah, go back. Okay, I'm almost done here. So this is about underpaintings, and I think you can see how you can manipulate things, and that the freedom of your brush can help create this energy. And when you're trying to capture something really quickly, the more you fuss with it, the tighter it gets. I'm just going to throw some crazy colors in
That
there.
looks great, though. I love it.
I'm going to just, so I'm thinking, I wonder what would happen if I put interesting greens over really intense fuchsias. And you can notice here, I'm actually keeping one as a clean out, and then this is where I have my yellows. I'm almost finished. And we're going to have some real action of bleeding and blending.
Is that just yellow that you're throwing over the fuchsia?
Now I'm working, can you see?
Yes.
There's a little bit of this limey green
Okay.
and some yellows. Wow, this is really blurring, but I think that many of these textures and ripples are going to accentuate a sense of field. I mean, so, and that's why I like doing underpaintings. I'll let that go. Now, so let's just stop here for a second. Let's really think about this. So that is an underpainting for pastel. This one is drying. And it's a little bit out of reach, but I think I can reach that. So I'm going to take my wet, I'm going to put it over here, out of the way, so that I don't create a flood into my beautiful pastels. And I'm going to So I'm going to move this station right here. Going to scoot my body up closer to this. And I'm going to show you guys one more thing. And I'm almost done with my demo. I'm going to show you how I use the tape as a catch tray. Okay? This is a catch tray to catch all of the dust falling. We're going to take, that's a little too far to reach, so I'm going to take it off of Ed's easel because I don't want to hurt my back. Ergonomics is a very important thing. Let's do it like this. You can see the relationship of those things. This is my catch tray for my pastels as they fall down. And what am I going to do? Well, I am going to just take a couple of minutes and play around with some pastels on the dry one. I'm going to work with the white. I'm going to get a dry paper towel because my others are damp, because if I touch my pastels with a wet paper towel, it's going to mess it up. So last night I started to throw some of this blondish yellow pastel in there, and it felt way too warm. Here's that one. You can see the difference.
Oh, yeah.
So not all whites are alike. That's a nice warm one. Okay. So it might, I have this image in my phone, so I could look at it to try to pull it up as my inspiration. But when I threw this watercolor in here, I wasn't too worried, because I knew that I could go in and begin to cut into this. See how I can push the pastel and manipulate this cloud? Okay, I can do that. I'm just going to show you a couple of little things and then we're going to stop. I'm going to show you how I can go into this upper area here and I can carefully float some light over top of that, or I can cut into my trees and begin to carve them. I can cut into the mountain to begin to create the shape of the mountain that I want. You know, if I'm lucky and I go out, the next night to the sunset paint out tomorrow night, maybe it'll look really similar to the sky, and I can take these out and use them for my pastel painting over it. Because since it's an underpainting, it's a foundation for me to apply my story onto it. And when I'm looking at my inspiration out there, I can look at the field and say, well, what can I use in these experiments that connects to what I'm seeing right now? And knowing that I can put a layer of pastel over it that can cover it up, I can manipulate it to begin to tell the story that I see. So I'm going to leave that note with you. My goal here was to spark some inspiration, not to finish a painting, but to open your mind up to multiple images so that you don't have one precious painting when you're out there. You could use this today wherever you set up. Once you take that time to set up, maybe you could do a couple of different images. There is the oil Canva board, and I do have some other surfaces. So who has connected to this as an option for how they might work today?